Hi everyone, I'm Jill of jamjarjill.com and this is the Jam Jar Jill podcast. This is our very first episode which I'm migrating across and I'm really excited to do that for you. This is my very first holistic health interview with the amazing Lisa Dumas from Lisa Dumas Yoga, who just created such a wonderful episode all around managing anxiety in busy lives. It was shot all the way back in 2020, which feels like a very long time ago now. It was 6 years ago when I started this journey. But this is a refresh and really excited to share this episode with you now. So I hope you enjoyed the conversation. I do think it's a timeless subject and it's so relevant to all of our lives. So I hope you enjoy it, and please do subscribe so you can keep up to date with all the episodes to come. I can't wait to share them with you. Sending you love and light. Bye. This is the Jam Jar Jill podcast, and I am Jill of jamjarjill.com. I am a eco-influencer. I am a virtual assistant. I freelance and run my own virtual assistant business. I'm also a mum to 4-year-old twin boys. I'm married and I live in rural Bedfordshire in the UK. I have done a few episodes here and there, but this is my first go at doing official, proper podcasting, and I'm so excited to invite my first guest, Lisa Dumas, all the way from California. So this is really super exciting to have you on. I met Lisa through the Instagram community a few years back. I think we sort of followed each other, and then I saw that Lisa was doing a podcast herself, which was all around yoga and Ayurveda, and which is the holistic theory behind yoga. And she was doing it with her friend Amy Pruitt at the time. And they were talking about how they were, you know, yoga therapists and trained therapists themselves, but they're also wives, mothers, friends. And I just loved the format of your podcast completely, because it was honestly just every episode just laid out like two best friends talking on the phone, and you felt like you were just part of that conversation, and it was so beautifully done that I was hooked instantly. At that point in time, I'd been practicing yoga myself since I was 15, so like 20 years, but I hadn't kind of really scratched the surface. I was kind of doing practice maybe once a week or something like that. And then when I had children 5 years ago, my anxiety, my insomnia kind of really kicked off due to that. And I've been through a really big journey with that as a result. And I think from being on medication, which I was prescribed initially, and going through that whole experience and then managing to get off it and go down the more holistic route, I think I opened my mind and my heart to a lot more of the holistic side of things. So I could just really relate to the story which Lisa had of having her own challenges with anxiety and turning that into a learning experience, and then further to that, a teaching experience. And I just have so much respect for you and doing that. I think that's a beautiful thing to do with life challenges, and it's something which I'm aiming to do myself. I think it's really exciting how the whole discussion about mental health has opened up so much in recent years, and people are talking about it, because I've just personally found, I don't know if you're the same, that the more I tell people about my struggles with anxiety, my struggles with insomnia, they're like, me too. And it kind of gets into like the whole Me Too movement, obviously is something different, but actually I think it's very relevant to the mental health space as well. And I think it just normalizes it all so much more. I mean, for case of example, you know, anxiety was never named in my family. We were always very much, oh, we're a family of worriers. You're a bit of a worrywart. You know, that was the kind of description which went around a lot. And I find, you know, it's just really interesting that since I'm being more honest, even within, you know, my closest rounds of my family about it, then, they then open up to me and say, oh, I really had that anxiety experience, or I was really worried about it. I had this physical reaction. And, you realize that actually panic attacks are not uncommon, and there's a huge spectrum of them, and it's like experienced in different ways. And I've experienced two types myself in the past. One where I felt like I couldn't breathe, which was very scary, and that was one which was kind of publicized, I think, at the time. And that was a few years ago, when I was struggling to find work and didn't know what was going to happen about buying a house and stuff like that. And I just went into this panic that I was going to have to move back in with my parents. And I did the whole breathing into a paper bag thing to calm myself down. But then I had another experience, and I've had similar ones since then as well, where it was actually when we just didn't know what was going to go on with the pandemic. And I was still at work, and my boys were around my mum's house. And it was just at that cusp in the UK when it was we didn't know if businesses were closing down. We didn't know if we were all going to get sent home. We didn't know if the schools were going to get sent home, but we weren't going to get sent home. And how the hell were we going to deal with childcare? And I think there was so much up in the air. And I just had this experience, and I actually went to a yoga class soon afterwards and described it. And I felt like I had a weight on my chest, like it was a physical, and I couldn't shift. I thought it was indigestion, and then it wouldn't go away. And I honestly felt oh my God, it's something happening to my heart here. I was really getting to the point where I was quite concerned. And I was in a meeting situation, and people kept saying, are you okay? And I was I don't think I am, actually. And basically I ended up going out of the meeting and driving to my mum's. As soon as I saw my boys, it just disappeared like that. And I explained it in this yoga circle I was in, and someone who actually worked on a mental health hotline, she was yeah, that was a panic attack. And I was oh. And she was was it there was an elephant on your chest? And I was yeah, that is the way I'd probably describe that. So, I mean, have you experienced, how has it manifested for you when you've experienced that?
Oh, well,
sharing.
Yeah, no. You said so many beautiful things there, Jill. So first of all, thank you so much for having me share this conversation with you. What you touched on about how we keep it secret at first, especially if we haven't learned a lot about anxiety or why we have panic attacks, especially if we haven't had a lot of people share with us the reality of anxiety, and how it can manifest, then we can feel like something is essentially wrong with us. And we all do see our life through that specific lens anyway. And sometimes it can just be more confirmation that we are somehow bad or broken. And so our natural inclination is to then conceal that and hide that and keep it a secret. And I think there's probably evolutionary reasons for that. We were tribal people once upon a time, and we lived in smaller groups, and we may not have wanted to instinctually show our quote unquote weaknesses. But what we're learning now is that it's a spectrum. And as soon as we do start to share, as soon as we start to speak our truth, then I think it is calming for us, because we recognize that not only are we not bad or broken, but we're normal. There are millions and millions of adults in the US alone that are struggling. And so it is one of the most common challenges that people face. And so I just think it's part of being human. And I think that if we can look at it as a state, a passing state that is part of being human, just like every other state we find ourselves in, that in itself can be calming. And then as soon as we start to talk and we start to bring it out into the open, then I feel that we are empowering ourselves, because then we start to open up to information. Because when we're keeping it secret, we're often keeping it secret to ourselves as well. And what I'm hearing for you is similar to what it was for me, is it was just so scary. And I didn't want it to happen again. So not only did I keep it a secret, but I also try not to think about it myself. And we know that whenever we're shoving something down that is right
Mm.
there at the surface wanting to be seen,
I mean,
that
that's a really interesting thing about, like, it's almost like, to me, my experience was like panic attack kind of comes out of me, and I can't, like, you can't control it anymore, because that's what you've been doing. You've been trying to manage your feelings and trying to push them down or what have you.
Mhm.
And I think sometimes it's like you're a bottle of fizzy pop or something, and then you just suddenly go, and that can happen with anger, that can happen with crying, that can happen with panic attacks. It can manifest in different ways. So it's interesting.
Well, better out than in. And so
Yeah.
to sort of take us back when it comes to anxiety, this is something that can be manifesting for a very long time in our nervous system. Yoga therapy sees it as a bit of a disorder of the nervous system. But what we do know about anxiety, because really there's still a lot of mysteries about panic attacks, to be honest with you. We know that they are genetic. We know that they can happen because of certain aspects of our lifestyle that may be aggravating an imbalance, like issues with sleep or maybe mineral deficiencies, certainly hormones, different big shifts in our life. You mentioned
Yeah.
becoming a mom, you mentioned big moves, times of uncertainty that we are all sharing all around the globe. That is a very natural time for our nervous systems to be more in that fight, flight, freeze, fawn side of things, because we're all very vigilant right now. Our bodies are created in order to keep us safe and protected. And our nervous systems are all about detecting our surroundings for danger.
Mm-hmm.
So we have just been inundated with so much to truly be afraid of. And there is a healthy way to look at fear. Fear has kept us alive, right? It has kept us looking out for true threat, but in the society that we live in now, it's so easy to see threat everywhere, including even
Sure.
in our inbox, including in our social media. And that is just a lot for our poor systems. And so if we're already somebody who has a tendency towards worry, this is just something that has been a part of us. I can certainly speak to that. I remember for a long time, just based on family dynamics and um, situations that happened when I was going to school, that caused me to really question myself, to question my worth and um, my lovableness, all of this. And so it had me kind of sitting on the edge of my seat, as I like to say, for years and years and years.
Mm-hmm.
So, I certainly had that first trigger. And
Mm-hmm.
you asked me what it was like for me. So I think that there had been a lot of cause for imbalances. There had been a lot of different situations that were sort of eating away at my sense of self and my personal power. So a lot of different dynamics that I can see now. Of course, I didn't know that then. Of course, we don't learn for a really long time about
Sure.
the way of the mind. We don't learn for a long time that the thoughts that we have about ourselves are simply habits that we learn along the way. So, not having any of that information then, going through what I did. And then I was in radio in my former life. And at that time, I mean, I'm 49 now. So this was in all through my early 20s. And at that time, it was, and maybe it still is, but it was incredibly stressful um, career where you're
Mm-hmm.
sort of live on the air. So
Mm-hmm.
there's this performance aspect, but there's this other aspect where you are getting feedback from people who are in managerial roles in your life. And that feedback is really about you as a personality. It's not like about how you're acting. It's about you. And just based on what I already came from around authority figures, those interactions um, were actually quite harmful for me and really had me lose any shred of confidence that I had, because I was a very confident child and into my
Mm-hmm.
teens, but just different things just happened to kind of erode that confidence until I really didn't have any left. And then I was coping with that with not the greatest lifestyle choices in my early 20s. And all of that all of that just culminated into what you're talking about for both ways. So for me, yes, I felt like something was wrong with my heart. I felt like I was having a heart attack or a stroke the first time
Mhm.
that a panic attack happened.
Horrifying, isn't it? It really is.
And I also couldn't breathe. And so
Mhm.
what that is, and what I say to my clients is the first step is really to empower yourself with information, because that can feel so scary. And then you start to feel like this prisoner trapped in this ticking time bomb of a body. And then our body becomes scary to us. And then we can make choices like I did that really cut off our connection to our body. But what
Yeah.
a panic attack is that is what it feels like if you were
Mhm.
seriously in danger and your body is giving you that rush of energy, right? So you're shaking and you're sweating and you're getting you're feeling temperature differences, and your heart is pounding a mile a minute to give you the strength to run. But because we're terrified of the
Mhm.
feeling of a panic attack, we're not running. We're stock still. We're experiencing it. We
Yeah,
are afraid of ourselves. And
absolutely. And the instinct is actually to run from that feeling, um, is to so you don't have to deal with it. But
well, in
actually,
fact, if we were to physically let our bodies really move in
yeah,
appropriate ways, we actually could help ourselves. But because we're usually
yeah,
very shocked and surprised, we're,
mm,
we usually would just look for a place to escape. So yes, we
yeah,
have the sense of wanting to run, but we are really just hiding, because then we have
mm,
all of these different thoughts of, oh my God, I'm going to
mm,
pass out. I'm going to freak out. What will everybody think? We have
mhm,
all of those thoughts. And then that just adds to the cycle. And then what
mm,
turns maybe that first panic attack into an anxiety disorder is because
mm.
then we start to fear if it's going to happen again. And
Sure.
for me, that took over my life, because I would start
Yeah,
to ruminate on, when was I going to have a panic attack again? Was it going to be on
yeah,
the subway? Was it going to be on air? Was it going to be when I was out for dinner with my friends? Was it going to be in the movie theater? So I started to make choices and skip out on life because I was too afraid of that to happen, and just stay home, keep
yeah.
myself safe. I used alcohol at the time to really
Numb
keep
it.
myself feeling safe. Exactly,
Yeah,
because I didn't know what was happening to
sure.
me, and there was a part of me that was too afraid to know. And it
Yeah,
wasn't until I was really I got to the point where, okay, I need to learn what's happening here. And also there's a little bit of sort of exposure therapy that I think happened for me and happens for a lot of people, is once we have a few episodes, we start to realize, oh, okay, well, I'm not dying. And
yeah, yeah,
I am able to feel calm after this. But
yeah,
I do suggest to people, do get yourself checked out. You know, there are a lot of
yeah,
different things to check out to make sure that there are not imbalances
yeah.
that you can tend to. Um,
Mm.
and then, of course, there are many things that we can do along the way. And I know we'll get into that in this conversation.
Yeah, yeah. It's so interesting. And I mean, there's so many things I want to touch on from what you said.
Mhm,
One thing which I did want to say is how I relate to your story, and I don't know if I've shared this with you before, but I studied media production myself, and my dream used to be that I wanted to be a TV presenter,
mhm,
and then did a media degree, and then volunteered at BBC radio station when I was like at uni, and then ran my own hospital radio show. So
mhm.
I did have some experience in that space, but then I feel like either no one told me or I wasn't listening. It's hard to know when you look back at your sort of late teens, early 20s.
Mhm,
Um, but that basically the option in the UK is that you would have to move to one of the big cities in order to actually make it happen to work in broadcasting. And equally so, you'd probably have to work on an absolute pittance salary and
mhm,
probably live with your parents and probably commute to like said town and being part of a horrible rush hour and all those things. And that's not something which I wanted for my life at all. And I sort of met my husband before I went to uni. And thank you for tuning into this episode of the Jam Jar Jill podcast. It's been lovely to have you here. Conversation does continue, but it's behind my subscription in Substack, which is for less than the price of a cup of coffee a month. So I really hope that you will consider joining me in my membership, and you will get access to all the long form podcasts as I upload them, and they really are deep and meaningful and wonderful conversations. And also there's going to be community, there's going to be interactions, there's going to be opinion swapping and link swapping and tons more content coming your way. So please hit the subscribe button, and you can either pay annually or you can pay monthly and see what you think of it all. Take care, and thank you for being here.